Some notes on insurrectionary anarchism. Insurrectionary anarchism is not an ideological solution to all social problems, a commodity on the capitalist market of ideologies and opinions, but an ongoing praxis aimed at putting an end to the domination of the state and the continuance of capitalism, which requires analysis and discussion to advance. We don't look to some ideal society or offer an image of utopia for public consumption. Throughout history, most anarchists, except those who believed that society would evolve to the point that it would leave the state behind, have been insurrectionary anarchists. Most simply, this means that the state will not merely wither away. Thus anarchists must attack. For waiting is defeat. What is needed is open mutiny and the spreading of subversion among the exploited and excluded. Here we spell out some implications that we and some other insurrectionary anarchists draw from this general problem. If the state will not disappear on its own, how then do we end its existence? It is, therefore, primarily a practice and focuses on the organization of attack. These notes are in no way a closed or finished product. We hope they are a part of an ongoing discussion, and we most certainly welcome responses. Much of this comes straight from past issues of Insurrection and pamphlets from Elephant editions. 1. The state will not just disappear. Attack. The state of capital will not wither away, as it seems many anarchists have come to believe, not only entrenched in abstract positions of waiting, but some even openly condemning the acts of those for whom the creation of the new world depends on the destruction of the old. Attack is the refusal of mediation, pacification, sacrifice, accommodation, and compromise. It is through acting and learning to act, not propaganda, that we will open the path to insurrection, although propaganda has a role in clarifying how to act. Waiting only teaches waiting. In acting, one learns to act. The force of an insurrection is social, not military. The measure for evaluating the importance of a generalized revolt is not the armed clash, but on the contrary, the amplitude of the paralysis of the economy, of normality. 2. Self-activity versus managed revolt, from insurrection to revolution. As anarchists, the revolution is our constant point of reference, no matter what we are doing or what problem we are concerned with. But the revolution is not a myth simply to be used as a point of reference. Precisely because it is a concrete event, it must be built daily through more modest attempts, which do not have all the liberating characteristics of the social revolution in the true sense. These more modest attempts are insurrections. In them, the uprising of the most exploited and excluded of society and the most politically sensitized minority opens the way to the possible involvement of increasingly wider strata of exploited on a flux of rebellion which could lead to revolution. Struggles must be developed both in the intermediate and long term. Clear strategies are necessary to allow different methods to be used in a coordinated and fruitful way. Autonomous action. The self-management of struggle means that those that struggle are autonomous in their decisions and actions. This is the opposite of an organization of synthesis, which always attempts to take control of struggle. Struggles that are synthesized within a single controlling organization are easily integrated into the power structure of present society. Self-organized struggles are by nature uncontrollable when they are spread across the social terrain. 3. Uncontrollability versus managed revolt, the spread of attack. It is never possible to see the outcome of a specific struggle in advance. Even a limited struggle can have the most unexpected consequences. The passage from the various insurrections, limited and circumscribed, to revolution can never be guaranteed in advance by any method. What the system is afraid of is not these acts of sabotage in themselves so much as their spreading socially. Every proletarianized individual who disposes of even the most modest means can draw up his or her objectives. alone or along with others, it is materially impossible for the state and capital to police the apparatus of control that operates over the whole social territory. Anyone who really wants to contest the network of control can make their own theoretical and practical contribution. The appearance of the first broken links coincides with the spreading acts of sabotage. The anonymous practice of social self-liberation could spread to all fields, breaking the codes of prevention put into place by power. Small actions, therefore easily reproducible, requiring unsophisticated means that are available to all, are by their very simplicity and spontaneity uncontrollable. They make a mockery of even the most advanced technological developments in counterinsurgency. 4. Permanent conflictuality versus mediation with institutional forces. Conflictuality should be seen as a permanent element in the struggle against those in power. A struggle which lacks this element ends up pushing us towards mediating with the institutions, grows accustomed to the habits of delegating and believing in an illusory emancipation carried out by parliamentary decree, to the very point of actively participating in our own exploitation ourselves. There might perhaps be individual reasons for doubting the attempt to reach one's aims with violent means. But when nonviolence comes to be raised to the level of a nonviolable principle, and where reality is divided into good and bad, then arguments cease to have value, and everything is seen in terms of submission and obedience. The officials of the anti-globalization movement, by distancing themselves and denouncing others, have clarified one point in particular, that they see their principles, to which they feel duty-bound, as a claim to power over the movement as a whole. 5. Illegality. Insurrection isn't just robbing banks. Insurrectionary anarchism isn't a morality on survival. We all survive in various ways, often in compromise with capital, depending on our social position, our talents, and tastes. We certainly aren't morally against the use of illegal means to free ourselves from the fetters of wage slavery in order to live and carry on our projects. Yet we also don't fetishize illegalism or turn it into some kind of religion with martyrs. It is simply a means, and often a good one. 6. Informal organization, not professional revolutionaries or activists, not permanent organizations. From party, union, to self-organization. Profound differences exist within the revolutionary movement. The anarchist tendency towards quality of the struggle and its self-organization, and the authoritarian tendency towards quantity and centralization. Organization is for concrete tasks. Thus we are against the party, syndicate, and permanent organization, all of which act to synthesize struggle and become elements of integration for capital and the state. Their purpose comes to be their own existence. In the worst case, they first build the organization, then find or create the struggle. Our task is to act. Organization is a means. Thus, we are against the delegation of action or practice to an organization. We need generalized action that leads to insurrection, not managed struggles. Organization should not be for the defense of certain interests, but of attack on certain interests. Informal organization is based on a number of comrades linked by a common affinity. Its propulsive element is always action. The wider the range of problems these comrades face as a whole, the greater their affinity will be. It follows that the real organization, the effective capacity to act together, i.e., knowing where to find each other, the study and analysis of problems together, and the passing to action, all takes place in relation to the affinity reached and has nothing to do with programs, platforms, flags, or more or less camouflaged parties. The informal anarchist organization is therefore a specific organization which gathers around a common affinity. The anarchist minority and the exploited and excluded. We are of the exploited and excluded, and thus our task is to act. Yet some critique all action that is not part of a large and visible social movement as acting in the place of the proletariat. They counsel analysis and waiting, instead of acting. Supposedly, we are not exploited alongside the exploited. Our desires, our rage, and our weaknesses are not part of the class struggle. This is nothing but another ideological separation between the exploited and subversives. The active anarchist minority is not slave to numbers, but continues to act against power even when the class clash is at a low level within the exploited of society. Anarchist action should not therefore aim at organizing and defending the whole of the class of exploited in one vast organization to see the struggle from beginning to end, but should identify single aspects of the struggle and carry them through to their conclusion of attack. We must always move away from the stereotypical images of the great mass struggles and the concept of the infinite growth of a movement that is to dominate and control everything. The relationship with the multitude of exploited and excluded cannot be structured as something that must endure the passage of time, i.e., be based on growth to infinity and resistance against the attack of the exploiters. It must have a more reduced specific dimension, one that is decidedly that of attack, and not a rearguard relationship. We can start building our struggle in such a way that conditions of revolt can emerge, and latent conflict can develop and be brought to the fore. In this way, a contact is established between the anarchist minority and the specific situation where the struggle can develop. 7. The individual and the social. Individualism and communism, a false problem. We embrace what is best in individualism and what is best in communism. Insurrection begins with the desire of individuals to break out of constrained and controlled circumstances, the desire to reappropriate the capacity to create one's own life as one sees fit. This requires that they overcome the separation between them and their conditions of existence. Where the few, the privileged, control the conditions of existence, it is not possible for most individuals to truly determine their existence on their terms. Individuality can only flourish where equality of access to the conditions of existence is the social reality. This equality of access is communism. What individuals do with that access is up to them and those around them. Thus, there is no equality or identity of individuals implied in true communism. What forces us into an identity or an equality of being are the social roles laid upon us by our present system. There is no contradiction between individuality and communism. 8. We are the exploited. We are the contradiction. This is no time for waiting. Certainly, capitalism contains deep contradictions which push it towards procedures of adjustment and evolution aimed at avoiding the periodic crises which afflict it. But we cannot cradle ourselves in waiting for these crises. When they happen, they will be welcomed if they respond to the requirements for accelerating the elements of the insurrectional process. As the exploited, however, we are the fundamental contradiction for capitalism. Thus, the time is always ripe for insurrection, just as we can note that humanity could have ended the existence of the state at any time in its history. A rupture in the continual reproduction of this system of exploitation and oppression has always been possible.